so forth, because we don't put knowledge back into this world. We're not putting knowledge back into the universe inside of our mind. We're not studying this stuff. Nobody's looking into this stuff to have a greater notion of it. Nobody's trying to analyze this stuff to have a better understanding of it, right? Hebrew alphabet comes from the Sumerian text. The universe says that the Sumerian text is back, and there's knowledge in that text, and so on and so forth. And we don't even try to understand this knowledge that's in the text. We leave it up to somebody else who's painting an idea that they want you to believe, that they want you to know, right? An ideal image. They put the faces on the coins to remind themselves of this knowledge and stuff. But what they tell us is something completely different. They tell us something completely different. But when you look into this, you will find a whole bunch of knowledge, a whole bunch of stuff that is not in its right place. They misconstrued times and dates. If you go back to the Canaanites, if you go back to the land of Cain, if you go back to all of that, you will find, some very, very critical information regarding to this plane of existence. When you go back and you look at the terms, the term Canaanite means nothing more to change operation. So in the 14th century, the Canaanites changed the operation of the body. So we started operating in the lower half of our vessel as opposed to the upper half of the vessel. And the knowledge is right there. It's all clear. It's all right there. But we have to be willing. Let's listen.
The English term Canaan, pronounced Canaan since c. 1500, due to the great vowel shift, comes from the Hebrew, non, via the Koine Greek chi alpha nu Canaan, and the Latin Canaan. It appears as Kina, Akkadian, Kayurkinaina, in the Amarna letters, 14th century BC, and several other ancient Egyptian texts. 8. In Greek, it first occurs in the writings of Hecataeus, c. 550 to 476 BC, as Kna, Kainu. 9. It is attested in Phoenician on coins from Berytus dated to the 2nd century BC. 10. The etymology is uncertain. An early explanation derives the term from the Semitic root kn, to be low, humble, subjugated. 11. Some scholars have suggested that this implies an original meaning of lowlands, in contrast with Aram, which would then mean highlands, 12. Whereas others have suggested it meant the subjugated, as the name of Egypt's province in the Levant, and evolved into the proper name in a similar fashion to Provincia Nostra, the first Roman colony north of the Alps, which became province. 13. An alternative suggestion, put forward by Ephraim Avigdor Spicer in 1936, derives the term from Hurrian Cano, purportedly referring to the color purple, so that Canaan and Phoenicia would be synonyms, land of purple. Tablets found in the Hurrian city of Nuzi in the early 20th century appear to use the term Canaan as a synonym for red or purple dye.
I want to stop right there. And a lot of black people should realize the play on that, right? The land of purple, right? And literally in our history, they keep on reviving this movie called The Color Purple, right? This is why they keep on reviving that movie, The Color Purple, because we're in the land of purple, where they teach you in the mind, dog eat dog, tear them down a peg or two, This is the trick of the word. It's right here. It's literally in everything. They play on us. They laugh in our face with it. Watch, listen.
Dye, laboriously produced by the Kassite rulers of Babylon for Murex mollusks as early as 1600 BC, and on the Mediterranean coast by the Phoenicians from a byproduct of glassmaking. Purple cloth became a renowned Canaanite export commodity, which is mentioned in Exodus. The dyes may have been named after their place of origin. The name Phoenicia is connected with the Greek word for purple, apparently referring to the same product. but it is difficult to state with certainty whether the Greek word came from the name, or vice versa. The purple cloth of Tyre in Phoenicia was well known far and wide and was associated by the Romans with nobility and royalty. However, according to Robert Drews, Spizer's proposal has generally been abandoned. 1415.
You see that? You see the play on that? Now, black people in America, you guys should pick up on that real easily because it's literally a play on a movie that circulates over and over again. The color purple, right? The color purple. It's telling you that you are in the land of Canaan. It's telling you that they operate with the Canaanites, so on and so forth. They're telling you this right in your face, right before your eyes. This is what they're telling you, right? Right before your eyes. Even if you look at this map right here, if you look at this map, you can see that in this map, this is not the land that they say it is. New Kingdom, 19th Dynasty, so on and so forth. This is not the land that they say it is. The landmass of it. Right? They changed up everything. History, times. They changed everything to fit what they wanted. That's why, they changed Greek mythology. You notice we went from Greek mythology to Roman mythology to New Greek mythology. Y'all ain't noticed that? That we went from Greek mythology to Roman mythology to New Greek mythology? Right? And then if you get into the generations of Noah and the table of nations, now you're getting into what was, how our, system was created, right? Now you're getting into how the system was created, why we have our social security numbers, why we all operate under the mystery of the sea, right? This is why you have your social security numbers right here.
The generations of Noah, also called the Table of Nations or Origins Gentium, 1, is a genealogy of the sons of Noah, according to the Hebrew Bible, Genesis 10 verse 9.
They had to keep track of us. They had to keep track of us.
2,
that's why they created the social security numbers.
The term nations to describe the descendants is a standard English translation of the Hebrew word goyim, following the c. 400 CE Latin Vulgate's nations, and does not have the same political connotations that the word entails today. 3. The list of 70 names introduces for the first time several well-known ethnonyms and toponyms important to biblical geography, such as Noah's 3 sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, from which 18th century German scholars at the Göttingen School of History derived the race terminology Semites, Hamites, and Japhethites. Certain of Noah's grandsons were also used for names of peoples. From Elam, Ashur, Aram, Cush, and Canaan were derived respectively the Elamites, Assyrians, Arameans, Cushites, and Canaanites. Likewise, from the sons of Canaan, Het, Jebus, and Amorus were derived Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites. Further descendants of Noah include Eber, from Shem, the hunter king Nimrod, from Cush, and the Philistines, from Misraim. As Christianity spread across the Roman Empire, it carried the idea that all human peoples were descended from Noah. However, not all Mediterranean and Near Eastern peoples were covered in the biblical genealogy. Iranic peoples such as Persians, Indic peoples such as Mitanni, and other prominent early civilizations such as the ancient Greeks, Macedonians, and Romans, Hurrians, Iberians, Illyrians, Kassites, and Sumerians are missing, as well as the northern and western European peoples important to the late Roman and medieval world, such as the Celtic, Slavic, Germanic, and Nordic peoples. There were others of.
You hear that?
The world's peoples, such as Native Americans, Sub-Saharan Africans, Turkic and Iranic peoples of Central Asia, the Indian subcontinent, the Far East, and Australasia. Scholars later derived a variety of arrangements to make the table fit, with for example the addition of Scythians, which do feature in the tradition, being claimed as the ancestors of much of Northern Europe. 5.
See that? Did you see that? It literally just named every fucking, listen to everybody that it named. It said, as Christianity spread across the Roman Empire, right? carried the idea that all human peoples were descendants from Noah. However, not all Mediterranean or Near Eastern people were covered in the biblical genealogy, right? So I want y'all to think about that. The idea that Christianity came from these locations is asinine or redundant because it's telling you that they were not covered in this book. So now you have to ask yourself, who was covered in this book? Right? Because we're living under a mystery Babylon times. We're living under a time where God's people don't even know that they're God's people. Right? We're living under a time because we don't even know what name to call on. They done falsified so much stuff, we don't even know who's who of who. We all running around here like who's who of Whoville, and we don't even understand anything because we're not taking the time to learn it. We're not taking the time to learn it. For whatever reason, we're just not. No one wants to learn anymore.
The scriptures have traced the patronymic lineage of the 70 nations to the 3 sons of Noah, as also the lineage of Abraham and Ishmael, and of Jacob and Esau. The blessed Creator knew that men would find solace at knowing these family pedigrees, since our soul demands of us to know them, so that all of mankind will be held in fondness by us, as a tree that has been planted by God in the earth, whose branches have spread out and dispersed eastward and westward, northward and southward, in the habitable part of the earth. It also has the dual function of allowing us to see the multitude as a single individual, and the single individual as a multitude. Along with this, man ought to contemplate also on the names of the countries and of the cities, wherein they settled. 7. Moses Maimonides, echoing the same sentiments, wrote that the genealogy of the nations contained in the law has the unique function of establishing a principle of faith, how that, although from Adam to Moses there was no more than a span of 2,500 years, and the human race was already spread over all parts of the earth in different families and with different languages, they were still people having a common ancestor and place of beginning. 8. Other Bible commentators observe that the Table of Nations is unique compared to other genealogies since it depicts a broad network of cousins, with a shallow chain of brotherly relationships. Meanwhile, the other genealogies focus on narrow chains of father-son relationships. 9. Book of Genesis.
Now watch this.
Edit. Noah dividing the world between his sons.
See?
Anonymous painter, Russian Empire, 18th century.
Noah dividing the world.
Chapters 1
his
to 11 of
sons.
the book of Genesis are structured around 5 Toldot statements. These are the generations of which the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, is the 4th. Events before the Genesis flood narrative, the central Toldot, correspond to those after. The post-flood world is a new creation corresponding to the Genesis creation narrative, and Noah had 3 sons who populated the world. The correspondences extend forward as well. There are 70 names in the table, corresponding to the 70 Israelites who go down into Egypt at the end of Genesis and to the 70 elders of Israel who go up the mountain at Sinai to meet with God in Exodus. The symbolic force of these numbers is understood.
And this is why Russia holds such a powerful secret, is because Russia, and they know the history of this. They know the trickery of a lot of this stuff, right? So Russia knows the trickery of a lot of this stuff, and that's why Putin always threatens, America president or whatever. This is why they always threaten, hey, listen, I'm going to tell them about Pangea. I'm going to tell them the real history of their people. I'm going to tell them who they really are, right? And the American leaders are so threatened by this, right, that they keep on giving in to these lower vibrational narratives because they're so afraid that this knowledge is going to create like mayhem or some shit. So when Putin says like, oh, I'm going to tell them about Pangea, or I'm going to tell them this, right? These are the threats that he's making, right? To tell about the real map of this world, to tell about how this world was once all put together, right? This is the real truth of what he's taking away from us, right? How this world actually looks, right? This world is not what they say it is. They keep on falsifying documents, keep on changing up maps, times, dates. It's got to the point where it's so confused that they don't even know where the beginning and the end is. You know? They don't even know where the beginning and the end is in all of this. Right? Look at how this map looks right here. Look at how this map looks right here. Mediterranean. Look. Look at South America and North America. Look where it's at. Right? Now, according to this, the Atlantic Ocean is over here. Look, Africa is on this side. Australia, Africa is over here. Right? You know? They make it seem like East Coast and far East Coast is nah, this looks like the West. This looks like this is coming from the West. You know, according to this map, it looks like everything is on the west of us. So how are they saying it's on the east of us? Something's not right. Something's not right. Dolores Cannon told y'all that they manipulated dates and times and they manipulated the map. Dolores Cannon told y'all that. You know? Dolores Cannon told y'all that. We don't see any pictures if we're supposed to see them. There's a lot of static because it's charging up, and you don't see the pictures because I don't have the. There you go. That's better. That should be better. All right, so you got to go back into, you know, Nebuchadnezzar, Neo-Babylonian Empire, right? When you go back into the Neo-Babylonian Empire, and this is just some of the old maps of how it looked. Some of the old maps of how it looked.
The Neo-Babylonian Empire or Second Babylonian Empire, 6, historically known as the Chaldean Empire, 7, was the last polity ruled by monarchs native to ancient Mesopotamia, 8, beginning with the coronation of Nabopolassar as the
Now
king
they
of
go by
Babylon in
like the
626
Chaldean
BC
Empire.
and being firmly established through the fall of the Assyrian Empire in 612 BC. The Neo-Babylonian Empire was conquered by the Achaemenid Persian Empire in 539 BC, marking the collapse of the Chaldean dynasty less than a century after its founding. The defeat of the Assyrian Empire and subsequent return of power to Babylon marked the first time that the city, and southern Mesopotamia in general, had risen to dominate the ancient Near East since the collapse of the old Babylonian Empire under Hammurabi, nearly 1,000 years earlier. The period of Neo-Babylonian rule thus saw unprecedented economic and population growth throughout Babylonia, as well as a renaissance of culture and artwork as Neo-Babylonian.
So this is the period that it was in, and this is when they had the sun god and, you know, believed in the power of the sun god, so on and so forth. This is a different, like at this time, you know, people had a different notion of existence, and they were keeping a track as an observer, you know, as people who was writing down the history of man. They was keeping track of all this stuff, you know. When people say Ezra and stuff like that, yes, these words now has fictional characters to it, but this is the history of the world.
By the verdict of the goddess Astenumtum, Naram Sin, the mighty, was victorious over the Kizite in battle at Tiwa. Further, Ilirezi, the general, Ilamuda, Ibizababa, Imtalik, and Puzrasar, captains of Kis, and Puzaningal, governor of Tiwa, Iliriye, his captain, Kalizam, captain of Iris, Edamu, captain of Kutha, 18.
That's why you got to listen to the words, because the truth is in the words of the history. You'll hear certain words, like if you read the Bible, you'll hear certain things from the Bible that is related to your body. You'll hear certain words from the Bible, and it's related to your vessel. It's related to your body, right? You know, Sodom and Gomorrah, so on and so forth. This is Sumerian stuff, Egyptian stuff. You know, the bloodline of and all of these other people that's in our history, the history of this world, right? This all took place. The Galactic Wars took place, and then this took place. How to stop the Nile, how to stop the water from running upward. It is the only water in this world that runs upward. It is the life water inside the vessels of mankind. It runs up your spinal cord. It is one of the rivers that run upward. They depicted this everywhere, from the Mississippi to the Nile River. They depicted this everywhere. And a lot of people are not in the understanding of this. What took place in the Dark Ages? How did we all, you know, get put in a setback? How did they start putting us in a backward state of being? Like, we're going back to being animals and beasts. We're not rising to have a certain level of dignity, decorum. We're not rising to that. We're actually lowering ourselves back into animal-like behavior.
The Dark Ages is a term for the early Middle Ages, c. 5th to 10th centuries, or occasionally the entire Middle Ages, c. 5th to 15th centuries, in Western Europe after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, which characterizes it as marked by economic, intellectual, and cultural decline. The concept of a Dark Age as a historiographical periodization originated in the 1330s with the Italian scholar Petrarch, who regarded the post-Roman centuries as dark compared to the light of classical antiquity. 1. 2. The term employs traditional light versus darkness imagery to contrast the era's supposed darkness, ignorance, and error, with earlier and later periods of light, knowledge, and understanding. 1. The phrase Dark Ages itself.
You see that? It literally tells you right there what light versus darkness is, right? It tells you that darkness is ignorance and error, right? They keep us in ignorance and they keep us committing sin. They keep us in error. So this is the darkness, is ignorance and error. And the light is knowledge and understanding, or in this case, understanding, right? So it's telling you right there what the light and the darkness is. We put a color on it, and now we think darkness is shadows. Now we think darkness is black.
Itself derives from the Latin saeculum obscurum, originally applied by Caesar Baronius in 1602 when he referred to a tumultuous period in the 10th and 11th centuries. 3. 4. The concept thus came to characterize the entire Middle Ages as a time of intellectual darkness in Europe between the fall of Rome and the Renaissance, and became especially
Intellectual
popular during the
darkness.
18th century Age of Enlightenment. Others, however, have used the term to denote the relative scarcity of written records regarding at least the early part of the Middle Ages. As the accomplishments of the era came to be better understood in the 19th and the 20th centuries, scholars began restricting the Dark Ages appellation to the early Middle Ages. Wink with a frown. 1, 5, 6. Today's scholars maintain this posture. 7.
See that? In the age of enlightenment, this is also the age of reasoning and the enlightenment, right? This is in this age. When it's talking about darkness, it's literally talking about ignorance and error, right? And when it's talking about light, it's talking about knowledge and understanding, right? So that's why I keep on saying, like, some of y'all gotta, when I say y'all gotta get out of the dark, y'all gotta get out of that ignorance and that error, that repetitiveness of committing that sin over and over again, right? When we're talking about, like, this is what we was teaching the people. This is what we were teaching them. How to come out of that ignorance, how to come out of that darkness, this is what we depicted darkness as. It wasn't a color. Humankind, whatever you want to call it, you guys created this color where you see darkness as a black color or so on and so forth. No, darkness is an energy. Darkness is ignorance. Darkness is error. That's why sin been sinning his whole life, because that's what you do in darkness. You keep sin going in darkness. The things that are done in the dark, you keep it going because it's a secret thing, right? So all of these sacred things is what y'all are using and manipulating down here to change different variations of the reality that we exist in. Trauma bonding, all of this stuff, reverse gender roles, all of this stuff, right? Y'all don't want to let Sophie's light back in. That's the problem. Y'all don't want to let Sophie's light back in. So y'all keep on doing this, individual programming, so on and so forth. You don't even know what natural law is. A lot of y'all think natural law means you got to get back in touch with society. No, that's the trick. You got to look at the Latin word for natural law. Let's go over that.
Natural law, 1, Latin, ius natural, lex naturalis, is a philosophical and legal theory that posits the existence of a set of inherent laws derived from nature and universal moral principles, which are discoverable through reason. In ethics, natural law theory, 2, asserts that certain rights and moral values are inherent in human nature and can be understood universally, independent of enacted laws or societal norms. In jurisprudence, natural law, sometimes referred to as ius naturalism, 3, or just naturalism, 4, holds that there are objective legal standards based on morality that underlie and inform the creation, interpretation, and application of human-made laws. This contrasts with positive law, as in legal positivism, 5, which emphasizes that laws are rules created by human authorities and are not necessarily connected to moral principles. Natural law can refer to theories of ethics, theories of politics, theories of civil law, and theories of religious morality, 6. Depending on the context in which naturally grounded practical principles are claimed to exist. In Western tradition, natural law was anticipated by the pre-Socratics, for example, in their search for principles that govern the cosmos and human beings. The concept of natural law was documented in ancient Greek philosophy, including Aristotle, 7, and was mentioned in ancient Roman philosophy by Cicero. References to it are also found in the Old and New Testaments of the Bible, and were later expounded upon in the Middle Ages by Christian philosophers such as Albert the Great and Thomas Aquinas. The school of Salamanca made notable contributions during the Renaissance. Although the central ideas of natural law had been part of Christian thought since the Roman Empire, its foundation as a consistent system was laid by Aquinas, who synthesized and condensed his predecessor's ideas into his Lex Naturalis, lit. Natural Law. 8. Aquinas argues that because human beings have reason, and because reason is a spark of the divine, all human lives are sacred and of infinite value compared to any other created object, meaning everyone is fundamentally equal and bestowed, with an intrinsic basic set of rights that no one can remove.
See, right there is telling you what natural law is and mean, right? Natural rights, natural laws. It's not saying that you got to eat like an animal. It's not saying that, it's saying that you hold the divine rights of kings and queens just by being a human being. By being a human being, you are held to a higher standard of laws, right? That only comes with being a human, right? And we governed ourselves these laws, right? Divine rights of kings, divine rights. They play by these laws, but they govern us to different rules.
Divine right of kings, divine right, or God's mandation, is a political and religious doctrine of political legitimacy of a monarchy in Western Christianity up until the Enlightenment. It is also known as the divine right theory of kingship. The doctrine asserts that a monarch is not accountable to any earthly authority, such as a parliament or the pope, because their right to rule is derived from divine authority. Thus, the monarch is not subject to the will of the people, of the aristocracy, or of any other estate of the realm. It follows that only divine authority can judge a monarch, and that any attempt to depose, dethrone, resist, or restrict their powers runs contrary to God's will and may constitute a sacrilegious act. It does not imply that their power is absolute. 1, 858. In its full-fledged form, the divine right of kings is associated with Henry VIII of England, and the Acts of Supremacy, James VI and I of Scotland and England, Louis XIV of France, and their successors. In contrast, the conception of human rights started being developed during the Middle Ages by scholars such as St. Thomas Aquinas. See natural.
And this is the concept. So when all of these things are getting put in place, they have concepts, right? This is why
Divine right has
it's
been a
easy
key
to
element
birth
of
a
the
nation.
self-legitimization of many absolute
Right.
monarchies. Theoretical distinctions. Claim rights and liberty rights. Individual and group rights. Natural rights and legal rights. Negative and positive rights. Human rights. Civil and political. Economic, social, and cultural. 3 generations. Rights by beneficiary. Accused. Animals. Autistic. Children. Consumers. Creditors. Deaf. Disabled. Elders. Family. Fetus. Farmers. Humans. Indigenous. Intersex. Kings. LGBTQ. Transgender. Life. Men. Minorities. Parents. Fathers. Mothers. Patients. Peasants. Plants. Prisoners. Robots. States. Students. Victims. Effective remedy. Women. Workers. Youth. Other groups of rights. Assembly. Association. Asylum. Civil liberties. Clothing. Development. Digital. Education. Environment. Fair trial. Food. Free migration. Guns. Health. Housing. Linguistic. Movement. Property. Public participation. Repair. Resist. Rest and leisure. Revolution. Security. Sexual and reproductive. Abortion. Reproductive. Sexuality.
Did you brush your teeth and wash your face?
Self-defense. Self-determination. Speech. Water and sanitation. V.
Now,
T.
Of all those
E.
rights that you
Part of
heard,
a series on integralism. Hide.
stop it. Of all those rights that you just heard, did you hear any rights of mind, mental, thinking, right? So, like, all of the things that they wrote the rights to, we don't have a right to our way of thinking, our mind, right? You can conduct yourself however you want, but your thoughts are still being governed in a sense. But that's neither here nor there because the laws state that, you know, we have the right to this stuff. The law states that, you know. So you have the right to be great. You have the right to be of a higher standard, so on and so forth. It's only when you hold yourself to a lower standard that literally, you know, this is where the trickery comes in. Hold on, what is that? I thought that was King James. Oh, King David. You got to go back pretty far in the history of this world in order to get truth. If you want to get truth, you got to go back pretty far into the history of this world to get truth. You know? And a lot of people are surface dwellers. They're not going to dig into the depths of mankind to get to this truth. But I appreciate everybody that was here for this hour of learning. I appreciate everybody that tuned in for this hour of learning. Um, we're going to take a break, go play the game for a little bit probably, and come back later on. And hopefully we can build the algorithm for both, you know, playing the game and putting knowledge out there. So I appreciate you guys for being here for this. We did do a little smaller one earlier, so I'm going to put some clips up from both of them on TikTok. And man, let's just keep the knowledge going. Let's keep the enlightenment going. And you know, wisdom and knowledge rules the air. So love is love. Namaste. Ashe. Salutation. Shalom. And if nobody told you that they love you today, let me be the first but not the last to tell you that I love you. And remember, one's image of oneself should be greater than reality. If you're not thinking highly of yourself, no one else is going to think highly of you. And with that being said, see you guys in the next moment.